admit that. I'm just like, I'm not one of those that says I don't like the popular stuff to be edgy. I'm not one of those people. I want to get that out there. It's just, I don't know. I'm just not picking up what they're putting down.
I just like that the Garth Ennis super fan among us just said, I'm not edgy.
Well, with the specific, you know the people that are like, no, I don't like popular stuff. Because that's how I'm edgy, because I don't like the popular. And I'm not doing that. I want to make that clear. That's not my goal. It's just, I got to be honest. They're just not doing it for me.
I mean, dude, you're talking to somebody who largely ignores 90% of television, popular or unpopular, just because I don't care. So yeah. I completely get where you're coming from on that. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. As per usual, this is Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And if I'm not mistaken, if the calendar is marked up right, this is episode 119. It still astounds me that we are in triple digits, much less, doing what we're doing. I'm very excited for several reasons this episode. And I know my cohorts are too, because, well, number one, they're always excited. Number two, because we've got a very, very special, super amazing, awesome guest that we have been trying to get on the show for a long time. Now, we actually had this individual on for a blip, but because of technical difficulties, and this was months ago, we only had her for a half an episode. So why don't I allow her to introduce herself?
Hey, friends. It's Wendi Freeman of the Double Page Spread podcast. How y'all doing?
I love that you just use y'all, number one. That makes me happy.
You know I always do. My grandmother is Texan.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, so we've got Wendi on for the whole show with us today. That is, right now I think we all collectively are looking for a little bit of a silver lining in anything, any place we can reach out and grab it right now. The silver lining, at least for this podcast, is we have gotten halfway decent at using internet talking recording technology, so we can do this now. We can have friends on the show, whereas earlier we were kind of limited. And this is we're going to go back, of course, to the roundtable setting that you know and love from the from all of our shows. Once we're able to stop social distancing and stuff, because comics and coffee on Sunday morning is a blast, and we love getting together and seeing our booze. But having this ability is really going to change some stuff for us. So again, small silver lining, and in no way cheapens the seriousness of everything else that's going on. But grab a piece of happy where you can find it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. Is there other stuff going on in the world?
There might be.
Oh, okay.
Despite the fact that most things have ground to a halt, and all that fun stuff, we really do hope that everyone is staying healthy, safe and sound. And, as I always say, if anybody needs anything, if there's any way we can help, even if just to talk and have a conversation, reach out to us. You can find us on Facebook at Southern Fried Geekery in our group. You can hit us up with an email, southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. We also have our Instagram and our Twitter pages. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those, and we would love to hear from you.
Well, you guys are boosting my mood already. You've made me infinitely happier.
Oh, good.
That warms my heart and my cockles.
Oh.
So, Craig is groaning because I said cockles. So we're actually doing this a little bit different than what we normally would. Normally, we record on Sunday mornings, and we have a little comics and coffee. This, as we were recording it, it's about 7 o'clock on Saturday night. So I've got a handy-dandy, very tasty brew in my hand. It's called Ugly Pug Black Lager, because I can do that because it's nighttime and it's okay to drink.
And we are not affiliated with them, but if they want to send us some money, they can.
Sure. Why not? Free plug. Free plug for Ugly Pug. Is anybody else drinking tonight?
I've got a Blackberry Merlot in front of me.
Nice.
I am not, but I was saying about how in Chicago it's so awesome because all the restaurants have these little prepackaged cocktail kits that you can order. So you can get a quarantini kit with blue cheese olives from an Italian restaurant, or you can
Quarantini.
bombs. Yes. So I was very, very happy with my quarantinis. So. But it's such a weird thing. I'm trying not to just drink for the sake of drinking during this.
I'm taking the exact opposite approach.
Caleb's going to need a new liver when we're done.
I made the joke that they might want to seriously consider making a 12-step program, a 3-hour course for the next semester of law school.
Yeah.
Because all myself and my fellow law students are all just like, you know what? Not dealing with it right now. Popping bottles.
Mhm.
So,
Good
so today
times.
is going to be fun. If you can't tell, we're all in really good moods. We're excited. Number one, again, we got Wendi on the show. Finally, it's going to be a great time. But this is going to be a little bit of a different show than we've had in a long time. It's going to be our chaos episode. As most of you know, normally at the end of the month, we do a show where we talk about a comic and then we roll into just kind of anything and everything. Well, last week, when it was the end of the month, we had our buddy Jerry on, who's former co-host of the show. You guys know him and love him, but he was wanting to talk comics and just, talk them. He did. We had a great time. We ran a little long in the tooth on that one, so we weren't able to have our just kind of our free form, kind of our free for all that we were supposed to have at the end of that show. So we're going to do all of that right here, right now. And since there are no new comics to talk about, what better time, right? Diamond is still shut down. No new comics are being sent to your local comic shop if it's still even open at the moment. A lot of places are having to, they've got shelter-in-place orders, and despite the lamentations of a million nerds, sometimes comic shops are not deemed essential businesses. So
What?
I
Yeah.
would like to give a shout out to the comic shops in Chicago. They're doing like pickup service stuff, like Challengers. They're doing pickup service, and if you call ahead, if you like, they'll gladly deliver you comics. Like, I think there are comic shops that are trudging along and helping people do things. I wholeheartedly think we should support that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and also, what a great time to really dig into our piles. What a great time to read all these things I've always intended to read. I'm way behind. I'm sure y'all are way behind. There are always things that we, always had on the bucket list. Let's do that.
Some of
Yeah,
us have,
that's what I've been doing. I've just been going through my trades and omnis and reading what I can read.
yeah, some of us have need to read piles. Craig actually has a need to read storage shed. So, because Craig has, we joke about it all the time. He has a massive collection.
I think I'm at 40,000 now.
Oh,
That's amazing.
it's incredible.
Of unique comics, so no duplicates other than variants. So
I have 6.
Get more than 6. Get out of here.
Well, 6,000.
Oh, okay.
6K. So Wendi, the three of us, we all have our quote unquote local comic shops. So we all meet up at Kapow Comics in Central Arkansas. Just it's a suburb of Little Rock, and we've got 3 comic shops in our locale, basically. Well, technically 4, but 2 of them are ran by the same person. And all of them are still open. They're going on reduced hours. How are the shops? Like, I know you said that they're doing curbside pickup and stuff. Chicago is a booming metropolis, obviously. Kind of how has this affected the comics community up there locally where you guys are at?
Oh, well, we have a ton of comic shops up here. We have a bunch of comic shops. Like I said, we have Challengers, we have G-Mart, we have my good friends, the Third Coast Comics, my friend Terry Gant, who runs that. Like, he always does mail order stuff, and I know, like, he'll do curbside pickup stuff if you call him. I feel like a lot of the comic shops are just being very, very flexible. Like, they know most of their clients. They know all the people at the pull lists. If you just give them a call and want to buy something, they'll gladly do that. A lot of places are doing delivery for you if that's the case. So support them.
Yeah,
Your shop however you can. So
yeah, our local is starting. What did he call it? Monday mail call or something. Yeah, that he's starting. So, but they'll do curbside as well if you need them to. We're not in we're in one of the ridiculous states that has decided not to do shelter in place yet.
That's crazy.
So I know it's insane, but so you can still go in and pick up your, whatever you're going to buy weekly. But yeah, he will also meet you at the car if you want or whatever. So.
I will say this about Matt though, even though we're not a shelter in place state at the moment. Number one, I think it's coming. I think it is going to happen in all 50 states before it's said and done with. It's going to have to. But even though he is still allowing people to come in and shop, you walk in his shop and he's got a little table set up right there with gloves and you can slather down with soap and germ killer. And he only is allowing, and I really don't think he's had to try hard to enforce it, but he's only like, quote unquote, allowing a couple of people in the shop at a time. So
that's right.
He's not letting it. He's being very good about keeping people 6 feet apart, and even though he is allowing people to come in and shop, making sure that they all wear gloves. If you're going to touch his books, you got to have gloves on. Making sure you throw those gloves away and you use soap and disinfectant when you're done. So he's taking steps, and I think a lot of local businesses are to kind of find a happy middle ground right now in states where they're not mandated to do so, to both try to mitigate some of the losses, but also ensure that they're taking care of their customers and themselves and their own health. It's a hard road, right? Because
it is, and a lot of uncertainty out there right now.
Yeah, I think Craig, you and I were both speaking to him the other day, and he doesn't have answers. Like, Diamond is not giving him answers. And it was interesting because we were talking about some things that are going on in the industry that we knew about it faster than he did because he doesn't, he doesn't live on Facebook. And so we had read articles about it before Diamond ever contacted him.
Yeah, I actually sent him the article about the, what was it called again? The
ComicsHub?
Yeah, ComicsHub. I sent him that article before he even heard about it from Diamond.
Okay.
Yeah, so fill me in on what the whole ComicsHub thing is, because that only lasted like a day or something, right?
So, you want me to take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Craig and I both kind of read up on this a little bit. So, essentially, ComicsHub is their own entity. They've been beta testing for about a year now.
So, not to be confused with Pornhub.
Not to be confused with Pornhub, which has been, there's a whole different section of beta testing.
Free premium.
So, there's so many jokes I want to make right now, but I won't. I'm going to.
Oh my gosh! Wait, can I go on a little side tangent for a moment?
A ComicsHub side tangent, sure.
No, Pornhub side tangent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So I'm a massage therapist. Part of my job is a massage therapist, and so now I have guys like sending me messages at 10 o'clock at night, asking me if I'll come hang out. Just hang out.
Oh no!
Oh, no, I'm trapped. So like they're offering to pay me to hang out, and so I had one guy who's like, "Oh, it's so awful." It's like I'm working from home. I'm with my family all day. It's like I've already gotten the Pornhub premium, and I'm just tired of that. Can I come over?
Social distancing says no.
That breaks no.
That breaks all the laws.
Yeah, so the fact that like my massage clients are telling me how they're bored of their Pornhub premium already, it's quite telling.
I feel like they need to open themselves up to some new things if that's the case, because maybe they're just watching the wrong channels.
Right? Maybe they need gay Pornhub. They need to expand their horizons.
Maybe, there's a whole broad world of things out there. DM me for links, kids. No, don't do that.
Have you read about the oopsie gazy phenomenon of like dudes who are roommates and like during the quarantine they've discovered that
oh my god. It just registered what you called that, oopsie gazy. Oh my god.
There's an entire Reddit thread called "Suddenly Gay."
Oh my god.
Or surprisingly gay or something like that. I forget. It's fun times.
Oopsie gazy.
Oopsie gazy.
Oopsie. That's amazing.
See, people are creative.
Is this like so? After this is all over, are they going to basically say it's like prison rules?
It's like lugs, like lesbian until graduation.
Yeah. Oh,
don't make eye contact and forget my middle name.
I was only quarantine gay. Right?
Quarantine gay. But so back to ComicsHub. So what that is? It's nerd porn. No, it's not. It's ComicsHub is a system that, like I said, it's been being beta tested. It's made by a guy who owns a shop in New Zealand. It has been being used in a shop that has it's a tangential comics podcast called the Comics Conspiracy, out on the West Coast. A guy named Ryan Higgins runs that. He's been using it for a while, but essentially what it does is it allows say me as a consumer, I can go in and go through ComicsHub, link to my comic shop's Diamond account, and because it's all in there, and I can manage my pull list myself instead of having to have my shop do it. And so I can order any special things I want to, and I can do that. The shop gets it, and then I can go pay the shop for it. So so essentially it's a side that it's hard to really explain what it is because number one, I'm not a tech guy and I'm still kind of new to this understanding, but they were planning on like launching this and making it bigger next year. They were going to keep working out some of the bugs and everything. Well, this happened and Diamond had to shut down or chose to shut down. They shut down. Whether or not it was a necessity or not, we'll find out in due time. But because Diamond shut down, the people who were kind of running ComicsHub got together and said, "Hey, this is our time. We can really go into this. We can launch it, and what we can do is we can team up through Diamond." And I think initially it was a good plan, but they weren't ready for it yet. So the whole idea was even though that comic shops couldn't get new stuff, launch ComicsHub, waive the fee for the initial startup, and get this thing going in all the shops that have a Diamond account, which is all the comic shops because Diamond has a monopoly on the distributorship. And they were going to waive the $500 fee, get it going, get it up, and then customers who couldn't go to their local comic shop, who couldn't get new comics, they could still sign up, again, under their comic shop's Diamond umbrella. They can control their own pull list, order the comics that would be sent to their shop that they can pick up later, but they would immediately get a digital code. Now, this was in basic talks, the way I understand it now, and I have the benefit of having like 4 days past this kind of blowing up to have researched it. Bleeding Cool picked it up, as Bleeding Cool is wont to do with rumors, quoted it as fact, promoted it as the saving grace for all of comics. Literally in their headline is the day that the direct market was saved. Really blew it out of proportion, getting a lot of people excited, and they didn't have a lot of answers for people. Diamond didn't sign on to anything yet as far as a blanket contract goes. They're interested, and they are working with ComicsHub in other respects for the beta testing, but they weren't ready to launch this as an entire thing. They weren't ready to really plug it in. Comixology has got some contracts with digital first licensing. They weren't on board with this. Several of your publishers weren't on board with this. Who weren't ready to send over their materials yet. And so basically it was Bleeding Cool being Bleeding Cool, and talking out of their asses. They do. Unfortunately, Bleeding Cool is kind of the biggest, and I say unfortunately, that's purely speculative in my opinion. I'm not a fan of Bleeding Cool. I know some other folks like it a lot, and good for you. This is just Caleb's opinion, and for what that's worth, which is not a lot. I think that they're terrible journalism. They have terrible journalistic practices, in my personal opinion. And unfortunately, that's the state of comics journalism right now. And so they're not alone in that respect. So it's not just them, but I digress. And so because they didn't have the agreements and the legal right to use to really use Diamond as a blanket platform and to be able to give people digital codes, and they didn't really have all the mechanics of how people were actually going to get paid, who was paying what, how the shops were.
Were you paying them or were you paying the shop? That sort of thing.
They didn't have that information yet, and so it all, as fast as it rose, it crumbled to ash. It is still a thing. So ComicsHub is still going to continue to be a thing. They're going to continue to work and build their platform, and they're not like, I don't want people walking away saying, oh, well, I heard, through this podcast that ComicsHub is just stupid and it's going to crash and burn. I actually like the idea of ComicsHub. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think given time and patience and the ability to incorporate things, it can actually be a wonderful help to your local comic shops.
Well, one thing I like about it is the fact that the customers will be able to access their account through their local comic book store and manipulate their pull list as they see fit without having to go through the comic shop.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so DC, like people who use online retailers like DCBS or Discount Comic Book Service, they have that option already. They kind of have that benefit, so it wouldn't be. I don't use them, so as I understand it, they have that option, and so it wouldn't be a new program for them.
Do you remember when they were doing that thing where like each store would have like a digital code or something, where like stores would be trying to promote like, oh, if you buy things through our digital store, then we get a cut, but like it kind of fizzled because they really weren't getting much of a cut.
Right. And I think DCBS had actually signed up on that. And, listening to Ryan Higgins' podcast, I think he had signed up to some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's one of those things that it's got promise. It's just not ready to quote unquote save the direct market at this trying time.
And another thing I feel so bad about is the people who have Kickstarters that launch right now, like Steve Bryant and The Catch.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, there are a few people who had put all their love and all this effort and all this stuff into like their Kickstarter, and this was the time, this was the date, or like they had started Kickstarter right before all that, I feel so bad for those, but I genuinely hope that perhaps something will come out of this, like some sort of sea change where Diamond isn't the only game in town, like somehow, I don't know.
Well, I think it's going to happen because Diamond's running into some cash flow problems right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, the publishing companies are going to have to find another way to get their comics out to the direct market somehow.
So from the legal perspective, and this is just my basic understanding as like a first-year law student, so, don't go to court over this. But Diamond basically has exclusive contracts with all the publishers. So while Diamond is up and running, the publishers can't go anywhere else, or they're in breach of contract. They can get sued. They can lose a lot of money. Like there's a lot of expectation damages that can be garnered from that. But if Diamond continues to be shut down and that product isn't going out, like there's it is, and this is a term of art, it is unconscionable to hold people to those contracts when Diamond is not fulfilling its end of the bargain. Like that's a breach of contract in its own right. Even if it's during a time of pandemic, because if they're saying no, we can print and we can get you the material, but you're not distributing it for us, even though we have our product in your hand, we can get it to you. Then that's that's an unconscionable term to expect them to hold on to that contract, because you're hemorrhaging money at that point. So if it continues to stay shut down, there's actually a way for the publishers to get out of those exclusivity contracts, which would that would create a launch pad for potentially another
means of distribution. Yeah,
exactly. Which is what we absolutely need.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and see, Diamond got away with it for years with not being a monopoly because you were able to order directly from the comic companies, from the publishers.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that anymore. So I'm not quite sure how Diamond gets away without being a monopoly anyways.
Wasn't it something about the fact that they also deal in magazines and other things? It was something
toys.
About the fact that, toys and stuff. Like, because you can still get those from other places, it technically wasn't a monopoly.
I mean, I'm sure there has to be a loophole, whatever it is. Yeah.
They've got some good lawyers.
That's what it comes down to.
who have created that. But like Wendi said, this could be the Phoenix rising from the ashes. This could be the time. Because you know what, I was listening to our friends over, and I listen to a lot of podcasts because what else do I have to do right now? Our friends over at 11 O'Clock Comics had Christina Merkler, who is the president of DCBS, and
I love her.
she's also she's an amazing person. She's also the head of the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund at the moment. So I'm fascinated by her, just across the board. She made a really salient point. The book industry still publishing. Barnes and Noble still getting new books, and Barnes and Noble still getting some of the graphic novels and the trade paperbacks. They're just getting them later than what Diamond would get them.
Well, see,
Penguin Random House is still pumping that out.
The bookstores get, like, I know not Amazon, Barnes and Noble gets their comics from Diamond, so they are still able to get their trades just as your local comic book store is. I don't know what my point to that was, other than making that statement.
Just that there are still stuff coming out, and there's still a distribution pipeline. It's just not, Diamond is blocking it right now, blocking it from the local comic shops, and when you look at the other avenues that are available to other types of retail stores, there's something to be learned from that, and maybe it's a wake-up call.
I expect there's going to be big changes to the comic industry. I don't, all these people that are doom and gloom that it's ending with this, that this is killing it, they're wrong. It will survive this. It's just, there's going to be changes, much like there is to the rest of America. There's going to be changes on how things happen.
Yeah, I think something different will emerge from all this, just like how the whole work environment, like, people are going to be going back to offices. I think something is going to change that will alter the course of comic distribution. I feel like more people are stepping up, and more people are stepping up, there's got to be some way to organize that.
Oh, I agree.
Can we discuss another aspect of news? The death of Juan Jimenez.
I saw that.
Tragic.
It's heartbreaking. What a gorgeous, glorious artist. So, if you're not familiar with him, did a lot of 2000 AD stuff, and it's just surreal work.
And he did a lot of work with Jodorowsky. He did like Metabear and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's another legend on too soon.
The sadness, the sadness creeped in. So we have two options because fuck it, it's Saturday, we're drinking,
and it's chaos episode,
and it's a chaos episode. So
does that mean this is the episode we just talk about Evil Ernie?
Brian Pulido has not been stopped.
I don't think anything ever could stop Brian Pulido.
That man is still.
Now he will still be churning out leather encrusted Evil Ernie books with the logo splattered in human blood or something. I don't know. He'd still be doing this out. He would still be buying it.
Real human blood.
I am not a Lady Death collector. Big surprise, the Good Girl Lady Death cheesecake doesn't exactly sing to me in the way that it might someone of another general sexual persuasion. That being said, I do own exactly one Lady Death comic, and I got it, I want to say it was 2012 at New York Comic Con, because I wanted to go shake Brian Pulido's hand, because that was, during the old times before the fall, where you could still shake hands. And
he's a cool dude.
He is a very cool dude. So the comic I got from him, it actually has rhinestones on it. So it's
of course it does.
Now it's making sense.
Yeah. Well, her bikini is little diamond rhinestones, and it's awesome because I've never seen a comic do that before. I've seen gimmick comics, and I'm a sucker for a gimmick cover. But
of course,
if you haven't looked at some of what Brian Pulido does with his comics, it's insane. Now he's a showman. I use this term lovingly, but he is a carnival barker. He's selling his wares. I use that lovingly. I think it's great. He is his best friend when it comes to promoting his work. And if you are a person who wants to self-fund and do Kickstarters and crowdfund your own stuff, if you're not looking to him as a shining example of what somebody can do on their own, you're looking in the wrong spots, because he's excellent at it.
Yeah, bless his heart. He's a good dude.
And
now, when you say Carnival Barker, you talking like what's his name that did the Marvel Zombies?
No,
Carnival Barker, like screaming
like
at you
like
as
a
you walk
carny.
by.
No.
I mean, I know what a carny is, but
yeah, like a carny. Like he's a really, he's just a very, very, he's just a very dynamic spokesman for film work. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, gotcha.
He is not. He is the type of individual. He will pull out a soapbox into the middle of a crowded walkway, and he will get up on it and use his. He's a small man, but he is a larger than life stature, and he will sell his. He's a, and he would probably shoot me if he ever heard this, but he's kind of what Stan Lee was, just in a different time and age. He is very well spoken. He is very much the kind of person who will get up and he'll tell you why you need his wares. He'll tell you exactly what makes it awesome, how it's metal, how it's the sexiest, goriest, most badass interpretation of what a comic can be, and how he's been on the forefront of this for 30 years. And the difference between somebody like him and Arthur Pseudonym, who you were alluding to earlier, is he's
I couldn't think of his name off the top of my head.
Arthur Pseudonym.
Yeah. Who, we spoke to him earlier this year. He's just doing his own thing, but man, Polito has.
But he calls you in as you walk by his.
He does reach out and grab you.
I also will say, as sort of silly and outdated cheesecakey as Lady Death is, and all those things, like I've never once heard of Brian Polito doing anything offensive.
No.
I think he's a good guy.
Oh, he seemed absolutely. He just wants to, be.
Now, doesn't he do most of his books as crowdfunded now?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then he releases them after the fact through Diamond.
Or
am I wrong?
I think
because I know you can get Lady Death books through Diamond, but they've been out for a minute.
So Lady Death, at one point in time, Avatar Press had that IP, and so they were selling it, but that was not necessarily in conjunction with Brian Polito. Now he has, and I wasn't, planning on. I forgot to look it up. I'm not exactly sure what his quote unquote publication title is, but he's got his own. At Coffin Comics, is that it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Coffin.
Yeah. So he's got Coffin Comics back, and he's slowly but surely like recollecting all of his different licenses.
Good for him. Good for him.
Putting in some really good work, just because he wants his babies back.
Yeah, because I mean, that'd suck. It's like, it's like Walt Disney not owning Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. It's when you don't own a property you created, it's kind of depressing.
Now, Matt, have you ever read any of Evil Ernie?
Yes, I have quite a stack of Evil Ernie and Lady Death comics from the 90s. Yeah. I bought a lot of them. And I was just about to say, this is the longest Lady Death conversation that's occurred since 1994. I know that.
What about Purgatory with an I? Remember that?
Evil Ernie is very much a Matt book.
That was all about Evil Ernie back in the 90s.
The 90s was very, very much Evil Ernie and Lobo. Like, if you were a certain type of dude, a certain type of edgy dude, you loved Evil Ernie and Lobo,
I have myself read some Evil Ernie.
I feel like
I was introduced to Evil Ernie in Hackslash.
Really?
Which then made me go out and read some other Evil Ernie stuff. But yeah, that was my introduction to Evil Ernie.
Okay. I feel like the Venn diagram of people who have a collection of Evil Ernie comics and people who have at least 7, no less than 7 Megadeth t-shirts is just a circle. It's just a circle. That's what the Venn diagram is.
But yeah, I ran into Brian Polito in the VIP section of Riot Fest one year.
See, this is what happens when you live when you live in a place with culture, is you can say those sentences.
Yeah. And he remembered me, and he was delightful. So
awesome.
So what have you guys? One thing we don't talk about a lot on this show, because mostly we're comics folk. This is the world we live in, and we really like to kind of stick close to that. But television, there's a lot of overlap, and right now where there's no new stuff coming out. And by the way, speaking of television, I don't know if you can hear this. My husband's in the other room watching Frozen 2, and so there's singing happening. So I apologize if it comes across. that being said, back to what I was saying, what have you guys been watching? What have you guys been keeping turned on to kind of help pass the time now that we don't have a stack of new stuff to read? When you're not reading older stuff.
Well, I believe the entire country has been riveted by the magnetic personality of Tiger King.
Riveted and magnetic personality. Yeah, okay. I can live with that.
That was a very delicate way to put it.
That is a fascinating dumpster fire of a documentary series.
It is a train wreck.
Well, why
don't so many shirtless interviews that it's amazing.
So I grew up on a carnival, as I think most of you know. And to me, what I saw there, the human aspect of it wasn't that surprising. As I said, I think the other week, meth heads are going to meth. And that was pretty much what I got out of that show. There's incidents that happen in that are surprising, but the way the humans act wasn't really that surprising to me.
Wait, here's the question. What is the Venn diagram of people who read Evil Ernie, collect Megadeth shirts, and own large cats? Do you think there's some overlap there?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No. Not based on what I saw, no.
I'm going to make I'm going to say
circles.
That's a hard no. I can't no. That's not my people.
So why don't? So can I make a confession?
Yeah.
I've not watched this. I will at some point. I assume Roger did watch it. I have not sat down, gotten through all of it. I did watch the first episode. I'm just not a big TV guy. So somebody lay this. Let's pretend like I haven't been on Facebook for more than 5 minutes.
Let's pretend you haven't already done the Caleb Exotic.
Yes, there is a Caleb Exotic video floating around out there with a Swiffer mullet. Because I'm a classy person and I really want to be hired by law offices one day. Why don't y'all give me just a brief, rundown of what the Tiger King is?
Sex cults, meth, thruples, tigers, feeding your spouse to a tiger. What am I missing, guys?
Dudes in affliction shirts who are responsible for interstate assassination attempts.
Yes, it absolutely reinforced my belief that you never trust somebody in an affliction shirt.
And not one complete set of teeth in the entire show.
Oh, did you hear the story though? That one of the people who confounded me was the woman who lost her arm. The person. Okay, so she's trans, but apparently she was misgendered throughout the entire thing. So this person lost her arm in the tiger cage, and instead of, they gave them the choice, like, you can either spend 2 years getting it reconstructed or just get it amputated, and they were just like, no, just get it amputated. That's quicker, sure.
Yeah, and so when this happens, Joe Exotic walks into the gift shop and offers everybody a free item or a discount, or they can leave when this happens.
Well, what didn't he offer them a rain check pass for come back
they
later?
They could have a rain check or a discount or come back. Yeah, it was.
Well, it's just fun because he walks right in and goes, before you see it on TV, one of our workers just lost an arm, so I'll give you a rain check pass or a refund, whatever you'd like. And then he turns around and leaves the room.
Yeah, that whole thing is a dumpster fire.
Oh, it's amazing.
The pizza. So
man,
he opens up a pizza restaurant using leftover meats from buckets from Walmart that they had been using to feed the tiger.
The tigers.
Oh man.
So as someone who has not experienced this, what exactly is this blood feud between Tiger King? What is his name again?
Joe Exotic.
Yes,
Carol
Joe
Baskin.
Exotic. And I'm air quoting that bitch Carol Baskin. Tell me about this.
Well, so Carol Baskin no better.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so she runs her own zoo area thing called Big Cat Rescue in Florida. And so, but she's no better at taking care of these animals and doing anything. All these like private people that own these exotic animals really weird me out. But she and of course she doesn't like the fact that Joe Exotic is doing cub petting. He makes a lot of his money just by breeding these tigers and then just like overpopulating them and getting rid of them after they're not cute. Like of course everyone wants a cute selfie with a baby tiger, but he just kind of like disposes of these tigers and just sort of like overpopulates breeding them so he can always have these cutesy baby tigers. And so she objects to that, which is legitimate, but she's no better at what she does.
Yeah, you can work for her for free for 4 years before every year you get a new color T-shirt. So that's a bonus. And
here's the question. Here's the question. Who would you rather work for? Would you rather work for Joe Exotic, where you can get like meth and four-wheelers and blow shit up, or work for her and get a T-shirt, or work for the other creepy polygamous dude where you had to dress sexy and live in a cockroach-infested trailer?
Well, see, I couldn't live with him because I'm not the right sex for him. So, and Joe Exotic, I couldn't do enough meth, so I guess that leaves Carol Baskin.
I mean, if you got a gun to my head and I have to make a choice here, I'm going to say the dude with the long white hair, because it looks like he'll just let you leave before anybody else would.
Yeah, the one.
I feel like they still had to fight for their. Yeah, they was still a sex cult. They still had to
which I feel like I could walk around unnoticed. Then is basically what I'm thinking I could do there.
I want no part of any of this.
I don't.
It's all bad.
Yeah, there are no good choices. That's the overall theme of the entire documentary. No good choices.
And every episode just steps it up with people who are worse and worse.
Oh man, it's just amazing.
I want to throw this out there. If the world needed to make famous a rednecky gay dude with tiger tattoos and a hot younger husband, I've been here the whole time. Like that's my niche.
If only we could have a show that's about you being that, but being like sexy lawyer. If we could have like a Law and Order type show, but about sexy gay tiger man with the hot younger husband.
What is the mixture of Boston Legal and the Tiger King? What does that look like?
Well, first of all, Caleb, you need yourself a arch nemesis that is trying to shut you down, that killed their spouse. Then you need kind of a semi-ally that runs a sex cult. So get those two things and we can get you working on your own show.
I'm halfway there, at least. Well, what else have you guys been watching? I know, so Wendi, and I'm going to bring up kind of a sore topic if you don't mind. I know you had originally planned to be down in Florida today for wrestling weekend, WrestleMania.
Yeah, so
weekend.
WrestleMania is going on right now as we speak. So I find it so hilarious. So now during WrestleMania weekend, there are also all these like little independent shows, like all these other little smaller wrestling companies run all these shows. And so like I had bought tickets. I was going to go to 9 different events this weekend. And so all of those got shut down, but WrestleMania gets shut down. But instead, they decided to run it to an empty arena, like with only the performers there. And like they've been doing shows like this like all week on whatever SmackDown or Raw or whatever, and like it's kind of hilarious. Like watching.
So I want to jump in on here. So I watched this week's. What was it? NXT, the WWE show, NXT or whatever. So I watched that, and I was flipping back and forth between that and the All Elite Wrestling, and it was weird. I mean, AEW
has done a much better job somehow. Like AEW has done like much more interaction. Like the audience is the wrestlers, so like you'll have the bad guys on one side, and they're like gambling and doing goofy shit, and like they're interacting with the wrestlers in the ring. Whereas, like, WWE has made it, like, much more awkward.
Oh, yeah. It was awkward. Everything just felt really awkward about both of them. But you're right. AEW wasn't as bad as WWE.
Yeah, I feel like AEW has is much more tongue in cheek about it. Like we're not going to pretend like this is a really strange situation. What else are you going to do? You know?
Yeah.
WrestleMania as this, and to make it like this. Oh, it's a 2-night event now, so it's like now you get 2 nights of watching really awkward, empty wrestling.
It is really strange to watch. It's like watching your relatives fight at Thanksgiving. It's just strange.
The thing I do enjoy though is like you can hear the shit talking more. So it's like I caught like the first match, which was like Asuka and Kairi Sane versus, you know, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross or whatever. And so like they're just like talking shit the whole time in Japanese, yelling at these women, and it's much more entertaining. Like that's humorous, but it's like you really gotta like overperform and just embrace this is a really ridiculous scenario.
Well, I say this as kind of an outsider looking in because I'm not really a wrestling fan, but it seems like the sentence that you just said that AEW is just doing it better than WWE is like that seems to me that's been the tone of the last 2 years of wrestling.
I think Matt's term was that it wasn't as bad.
Oh, okay.
well, now so I'm talking about specifically the empty arena wrestling point. Now, I watched an AEW pay-per-view a few weeks ago. First wrestling event I've watched in 20 years.
I was at that one. That was during C2E2 weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot more fun than WWE has been in a long time. And it took me a second to realize the big reason for me, anyway, was there was no monologuing on the microphone. They just went at it, man. They just went at it. And there was one wrestling match, that tag team wrestling match. It felt like it was never going to end, and I thought that somebody was going to die before the thing ended. It went on so long, it was so intense. It was wild.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, and that was that was like super entertaining.
Yeah, that was wild.
Well, you've
and of course that
Orange Cassidy into AEW. I mean, number one, wasn't it AEW that you actually played on one of their pay-per-views?
Yes, I got to play drums for the Young Bucks' father.
Okay.
I did. So yeah, I have a personal stake in why I love AEW.
Cool.
Well, as someone who follows that a little bit more than we do, what is it about? And for Matt, it seems like it's the actually more action and less feigned interest in the drama. What is it for you that makes it better?
Well, they're the first sort of challengers to WWE. Like they're the first sort of like people have really stepped up big enough to have a cable show and really try to go head to head. And they have like I like their women's division. I think they've got a lot of they've got some really strong women, and of course they have this one guy, Orange Cassidy, who is like beloved. Orange Cassidy is just hilarious. He's just this dude who just like wears shades, and he wears like a denim jacket and jeans, and like he has his hands in his pockets the entire time. And the whole thing is like he's the most casual, chill guy ever. He's the most chill wrestler. And so it's like they're not afraid to do things that are kind of silly,
Crazy.
I think they needed that. So I know that, and New Japan Wrestling has really blown up over here.
Yeah.
And like you said, now and maybe it links back to some of the problems that comics has that we were speaking about previously with, when you only have one distributor, you kind of run into some stagnancy. You get a little bit of a funk there. And it seems like, at least in my zeitgeist, in the world I live in, and the communities that I'm a part of, I actually hear people talking about, wrestling, where I hadn't heard them, those conversations happening in years, in almost a decade. And now people it's coming back to the forefront, and it's largely AEW. It's New Japan Wrestling. It's these smaller organizations that are pushing into the hold that, and again, I'm a bad wrestling nerd, but the owner of WWE,
Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
Vince McMahon.
Yeah. It seems like they're loosening his stranglehold on that industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially you have so many people who are jumping ship from WWE to AEW, And like it seems like they're just having more fun. Like they have more control over their storylines and their characters, and they're being who they want to be. You know, like Jon Moxley is this huge example. You know, like he left WWE and he came over, and now he's like one of the top stars. He's got the main title, and it just feels like it's just they're able to breathe more, I think.
Well, when was the last time something like this happened in the wrestling business, Wendy?
I don't know, WCW? I don't know.
You think so? See, I was thinking ECW. I was
right.
You don't think it's a closer comparison to ECW than WCW?
No, I think it is. I just don't have a deep history knowledge. Yeah, but no. And then we had to talk about Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah.
What is Dark Side of the Ring? Tell me about this.
So there's a series on Vice, this documentary series on Vice called Dark Side of the Ring. And it goes into just like these stories, these like sort of the history of wrestling of like these terrible things that have happened, like different deaths and abuse and things like that. And so it goes into these meaty backstories of like these crazy things that have happened throughout wrestling history.
Yeah, it's starting at least with more of the scandalous or outstanding wrestlers that have been in the business and just unfortunate events, whether it's, by their own choices or not. And I mean, this show can go on for years because there's all kinds of unfortunate events that have gone on in the wrestling business ever since it's existed, just by the nature of the business itself. So this is my new favorite show. It's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, like they'll do episodes about like the killing of Bruiser Brody, who died in a locker room, yet everybody who's in that locker room swears they have no idea what happened, you know, or like they did a 2-part episode about Chris Benoit, who murdered his wife and child, and like we were saying, you were talking about that autopsy show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where like originally when it happened, they thought it was roid rage, and now like they really back and they've learned that it was concussion damage and like all his brain damage.
Yeah. Well, I keep waiting for him to do one on China. I keep waiting for him to do one on Owen Hart, for example.
Oh, I think there is an Owen Hart one this season coming.
Oh, it's gotta be coming.
Now, is this on the Dark Side of the Ring show, or is this a second?
Yeah, on Dark Side of the Ring show. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you mentioned an autopsy show. What is that the same thing?
Well, that's what Craig was talking about. Craig was talking about there was an autopsy episode about Chris Benoit on some.
So yeah, that was actually Matt talking about that.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The autopsy show, what they do, where it's a doctor who examines pathology reports from celebrity autopsies, and really the point of the show is to dispel rumors. That's really the entire point. Is he breaks down the autopsies and makes his conclusions on what most likely or definitely caused the death of. And it's actually really interesting. One, because it dispels rumors, so it kind of repairs damaged reputations, and also it really gives you a good idea of just what kind of abuse the human body can take before it finally succumbs to it. And it's surprising as well, because you'll watch some of these about a celebrity who's got a long history of, say, hardcore drug abuse, and then you find he didn't die from that. You find that he died of something completely separate from that altogether. And it's continually amazing to me how much damage the human body can take.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas. Mm-hmm. And of course, the popular joke is like, oh, she died choking on a ham sandwich. And that's always been like the rumor in the story. She died choking on a ham sandwich. She was fat. Isn't that funny? Haha, whatever. But the real truth of the matter is she didn't choke on a ham sandwich. She didn't even eat that ham sandwich. She died of heart problems from years and years of dieting. And so she and Karen Carpenter literally died of the exact same thing. Their hearts just gave out because of these years and years of constant dieting.
Yeah.
But it's like Karen Carpenter was super skinny and anorexic, so she gets sympathy, whereas Mama Cass, gets the myth that she choked on a ham sandwich.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It kind of brings us to a little bit of a cool place we can segue there, because one of the neat things, even from when I watched wrestling, that one of the things I was always interested in, the heels, the bad guy, the villain, and when it comes to wrestling, there's a lot of overlap between at least superhero comics and how they portray, villains and who the evil guy of the week is. And that's kind of what we were going to talk about last week, and we didn't get to. And that's I'm actually okay with that because I love having Wendi as part of this conversation because Wendi's knowledge of all things film and comics history. She just lays it on, and it's awesome. Let's talk about some of our favorite villains, and I would say let's start with Big Two and then go from there. Who do you guys see as some of the biggest villains from say Marvel and DC, and what do you guys think makes those villains just so fun? They're bad guys, but you can't help but love them. And we'll start with Wendi. Wendi, who are some of your favorite Big Two villains?
I was gonna say MODOK.
Okay.
Is definitely one of my favorite villains. First of all, his design is so fantastic. Like everything about MODOK is so iconic, and with his
and just like legs.
His little baby legs, he's got a cool acronym. I think MODOK is definitely one of the greatest, most iconic villains ever created for comics.
So that brings up the question: did you read West Coast Avengers, the latest run that had Brodok on it?
No, please tell me about it.
Oh my God! Yeah, you need to pick this up.
I mean, I'm familiar with Modam, the Lady MODOK.
No, you need to pick this up in trade and read it because MODOK is now living in Los Angeles, has given himself a makeover, and is going by Brodok and looks like a surfer.
That's awesome.
It's fantastic. And that's not even the best part of that run. There's a land shark that they adopt as a pet.
Named Jeff.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So the interesting thing about that is, and without spoiling anything from the plot, he doesn't just show up as this kind of surfer bro guy. He infiltrates the team and is trying to pose as a hero. And the way he's drawn, because when you think of MODOK, it's all head, right? Like it's just tiny arms, little bitty legs, head that's 200 times the size of his body. This surfer figure is kind of he's lean and muscular like a surfer would be, but his head is about 4 sizes too big for his body. Like he looks like a baby he looks like a giant man baby throughout the whole thing. As he's just like, and everyone knows something's up because he's just laying it on thick to the entire team, trying to present himself as the new hero. But and everybody kind of knows.
It's pretty great.
It was one of my favorite books of last year. Well, Craig, you kind of have the floor. Who's one of your favorite Big Two villains?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is Joker. So going outside of Joker, I'm going to go with Black Adam, and it was in the New 52, or not New 52, the 52 comic, where you kind of got the anti-hero version of Black Adam, and you got this really relatable kind of character that was just looking for vengeance over his wife dying.
It's kind of almost like a Dr. Doom feel for him in
that
run.
Yeah, it was my favorite run of. 52 had a lot of great things in it, but Black Adam was one of my favorite things that came out of that.
Yeah, the stuff he did for to set up Kandahar. Number one, that was an amazing setup series for it's what they launched the entire New 52 out of, and while that was there's a lot that could be said, or maybe it's better left unsaid about that. The actual series itself, you've got Batwoman that comes out of that. You've got Renee Montoya's The Question that comes out of that.
Booster Gold became a household name again.
Right. And then, of course, you've got what Black Adam did in Kandahar with his entire family, and it's just that whole set. Like he almost felt to me like the next evolution of Dr. Doom in that book. Because it was like, what happens if Dr. Doom actually succeeds and thinks about something besides power?
Right.
And that's where it went. It's just,
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
So I think one of my favorite all-time villains, out of the big two has got to be Ultron, and not just the Ultron that you see from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the actual early Avengers Ultron. And number one, because he is just a he's a robot, so of course he's void of emotion, but he's a sociopathic killing machine that really at the end of the day it's just driven by daddy issues. He was created by Pym to be something that he can never be, and he's watched all of these the Vision, he's watched all these other creations get brought up, and everything he does, at least when he's written well, is driven by the need to almost impress Hank Pym and to make Hank Pym proud of him, even though he's doing something antithetical to anything Hank and Janet can do. But he really does see them as being the end goal, and if the only way he can stop from disappointing them is to wipe out humanity, so there's nothing left for him to do for them to be disappointed in. And he can't help it. That's just what makes him go. And one of my favorite runs on that is the Kurt Busiek George Perez run from Volume 3, where I think it's the Ultron Unlimited storyline where he is able to start self-replicating and try to take over the world. And when you're doing that, who does he go after? Does he go after world leaders? No. Does he go after the big Avengers? Alpha Flight, the X-Men. I mean, maybe yes, but that's not his main goal. He literally seeks out and kidnaps and confines everybody in Hank Pym's family. I mean, Janet Van Dyne, the Vision, who is actually his son, Wonder Man, who they used part of his genetic code and part of his personality to create the Vision. Of course, Scarlet Witch, because that was the Vision's husband, or that was the Vision's wife. They even go so far as to get the Grim Reaper, because that's Simon Williams' brother. So he really just goes out of his way to collect this family, to show them what he's gonna do, because if nothing else, he's gonna make them proud by ending everything that could bring them shame, which is. It's crazy. He's just a cool design, great villain, and surprisingly human, even in the fact that he's just a subhuman murder machine, literally. What about
last time I remember seeing him, Caleb, wasn't he wearing Hank Pym's face?
He was not technically wearing Hank Pym's face. He and Hank Pym kind of merged. He's like a half Hank Pym, half Ultraman. There was a graphic novel an OGN that they put out that kind of explained how that happened. Off the top of my head, I can't even tell you the creative team on that. But eventually what happened is they couldn't separate them. They couldn't pull the two from each other. And so they just kind of launched them into space, because that seemed like the smart move to someone. This seemed very much like a Tony Stark idea, if I think about it. Like, if you can't fix it or cure it or make it right, just launch it into the dark reaches of space and hope like hell it never comes back. Like, that seems like a very Tony move. So I don't actually know if it was Tony's idea, but I'm just blame Tony. Why not?
It probably was.
Because you can't pull those two apart. What you got on this one, Matt? Tell me about a villain.
So for Marvel, this is a very difficult choice for me, because the cast of villains in the Marvel universe, for me particularly, are so strong. And I mean, today my answer is Magneto. Another day my answer might be Doctor Doom. It's probably Magneto, simply because of the way Magneto is being written right now in the X-Men universe, in the X-Men storyline. But it's his unbridled arrogance and complete certainty in what he believes about himself. That's the thing that makes a really compelling villain to me, is they have absolutely no self-doubt in their own motivations. And one of my favorite things about Magneto, the way he's being written right now, is he's constantly telling everybody how mutants are better than everybody else. And it's just really interesting to me that in the world that they live in, where their mutants are villainized for literally being mutated, he has absolutely no doubt that they are not subhuman; they are extra human, and that is just what makes him so compelling to me. Is his arrogance combined with his certainty.
Well, also he's always been such a sympathetic character, you know, like he's always been, you know, like all those Magneto is right T-shirts, you know, like Magneto's somebody where you can definitely see his point of view.
Yeah.
So one of the things I always found interesting about his character, because if you break it down, and I think Matt laid it out, you know, poignantly, is he's a supremacist. At the heart of the thing, like he's 100% a mutant supremacist. And that's what he always butted heads with Charles with, because Charles was, you know, let's live in a codependent world. You know, we can all get along and we can find a way to exist together. And Magneto was, no, we're the, you know, I hate using the term because of the connotations that go with it, but we're the master race here. We're better than them. We can shoot laser beams out of our ass and make snow appear in the desert. You know, we're better in every way. And I'll, you know, that you couple that with the idea that he is a product, at least in some storylines, and it was a retcon, but he's a product of the Holocaust. You know, so you know he's a product of people who had those same ideas, that murdered his family, and it's, you know, this kind of evolution of violence begets violence. And even though he was a victim of that mentality, that victimization has like brought him to embody it. And you know, now he's being written in a world that is allowing him to have succeeded in that, and like, you know, almost for the first time ever, we see Charles taking his point of view on things, which is interesting to say the least.
I mean, we've always seen Magneto flip-flopping, like sometimes he's the leader of the X-Men, sometimes he's you know, this, like there's always been that sort of push and pull of his loyalties and his allegiances, and when the X-Men can sort of bend themselves enough to understanding him, you know, I think he is like one of the most flexible, relatable characters like that.
Well, what I'm waiting for in this storyline, and this is to me what spells that really where the hard line comes between him and Charles, is when Magneto decides to go on the offensive.
Yes.
I feel like we're waiting for, because what we're seeing now is Krakoa in this system that they built. We're seeing that crack, and we're seeing the cracks get bigger. And what I'm waiting for is the moment where Magneto decides to go on the offensive. And that's when we're going to go back to Charles versus Eric.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And we're seeing that this is one of those things that I think is ingenious, that really speaks to the depth of planning that went into that. We're seeing those machinations come to life in the different books. And a lot of people think it's, you know, just because you've got different writers, they're being written a different way, and that's not the case at all. It's a setup. And you know, in one book, you've got Magneto telling somebody, you know, I can't let you do this thing because it's against the law, and you know, we have this law for a reason. And you know, look, if it were just up to me, I'd let you do it because, you know, fuck that guy in general, he needs to die. But you know, we've got the law, and it applies to all. So I'm going to throw you up against the, you know, throw you out of the wayside. In another book, you've got him taking the exact opposite approach. You know, why didn't you do this? Well, because it's against the law. That doesn't apply to you here. You know, he tells
yeah, and a lot of that depends on who he's talking to.
Yeah, no, he's 100%.
Charles person, yeah.
It's setting it up for him to make that offensive move that Matt's talking about. And you know, I've seen people online saying, "Oh, you know, Marvel can't keep its story straight." No, they have their story straight. You're just not picking up what they're putting down.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Magneto being written really well. You know, so Matt said something about one of the things that makes him a great villain is just how sure of himself he is. It's funny because one of my favorite DC villains is the exact opposite of that, and what makes me love Two-Face is the fact that he's continually unsure of himself, and he's always of two minds about everything. You know, he never knows what his next move is going to be until until a coin tells him. And you know, in some ways, he dictates that. He pulls the strings to make the outcome he wants come out. But when he's being written really well, you see that he really has no foregone autonomy. It's all an unsurety when it comes to him, which, you know, inevitably always works in Batman's favor. But it's to me, it's that lack of planning, lack of foresight that really makes him a chaotic character that can make a story do some really, really cool things. And, you know, again, sympathetic. You know, when it's Harvey Dent, you feel bad for the guy because Harvey doesn't want to do these things. He's compelled by a different force, and he is apologetic. And as soon as that starts to bleed through, Two-Face takes over and just is the diabolical bastard that he is. And it really...
Yeah, and we're actually seeing that right now in the current run of Detective.
Yeah, it's being done really well in Detective. And yeah, so like to me that is what makes him one of my, Craig, you said it. The Joker obviously is. You ask 100 people, you're going to get 90% people saying the Joker. The Joker's not my favorite villain. There's some great Joker stories. And nothing against that character. But the Joker is so almost beloved, almost everybody's got to write their Joker story that I don't know that there's a lot that hasn't been done with that character that really could without changing that character within those brackets. There's a ton that can still be done with Two-Face. There's been a lot of Two-Face stories, but he's not been so spotlit that he's almost locked into a preconceived notion of what he's going to do. And when you get Joker stories that break that mold, that's when they really tend to shine. And those are few and far between anymore. I think there's some really, really fresh ground to be taken with Two-Face in that regard. That if you were to give it to a character like, say, Tom Taylor, and let him run with it, I've been singing Tom's praises lately because I think he's number one, the master of the one shot. That man's craft is just out of this world. But he's also just an idea factory. And
can I sideline discuss the hilarity on Twitter of the fact that he has now made his picture look almost exactly like Tom King?
Yeah.
I haven't heard about this. What happened?
King are like, we're always getting confused for each other, so now we just like banter back and forth and just say the same things and look the same.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so like they'll just like write back and forth with each other. Same. And it just looks like this whole thread of the same person saying the same thing.
That's hilarious.
Oh, I just pulled it up. So they're both wearing DC hats and everything.
Yeah, it's the same pose and everything.
Oh my God. That's funny. See, that's some grade A trolling.
Yes.
Craig, throw another on it. Go to the other publisher.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm an idiot. I didn't realize that we were doing Marvel first. So.
Oh, I didn't care which one. I just said big two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Bullseye.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed Bullseye. He made his first appearance back in Daredevil 131, Marv Wolfman and John Romita. Just always been a fascinating character to me. There was a miniseries that they did in the early to mid 2000s that was him. He, as a young man, became a baseball player. Pitched one game in the major leagues, pitched a no-hitter and walked off. Never pitched again. It was kind of great because, he's so great at never missing a spot. He was able to do that. It was kind of fascinating. I've just always loved the character. I love how they portray him as just this evil assassin. And it's always been fascinating to me.
He
I love when it's just dead silence or something.
I've started hesitating because I don't want to be the person that cuts anybody else off. But no, so, I mean, you get him in the hands of a character or of a writer like Frank Miller, which, some of my favorite Bullseye stories have came out of that. I think like stories like Roulette, just like there's a sadism to that character that is.
Yeah, he's absolutely a sadistic.
Oh yeah, he's a sadistic maniac.
Yeah, and he just enjoys being this assassin. He enjoys it. It's not that he does it for a living. When you look at somebody like Deathstroke or Deadshot that do it because they're mercenaries, you know, he does it because he enjoys the hunt and the kill.
Well, it's like, you know, that Ed Brisson miniseries that I read a few years ago that I always tell people about. There's a moment in there that I thought encapsulated the character very well. He's actually talking to somebody. He's trying to get hired to do a job. He's broke. He needs some money. Well, as he's talking to this guy, he's like, hey, basically fish me out for some work. He's standing at the window, flipping coins at the window and causing car wrecks. It's just, I love that. It's amazing.
Well, myself included, we all, you know, obviously when I think of Daredevil, it's hard not to just immediately default to, well, and I say Daredevil through Bullseye. It's hard not to default to, you know, to the man of the myth himself. But you know, Frank Miller's not the only person who's written really iconic moments for that character. Marv Wolfman wrote the shit out of Bullseye.
Yeah.
You know, you know, having him throw a blade in Elektra. I mean, and that's one of the motivating factors of Daredevil stories for years, almost decades after that. Just shit, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of great moments and has been written really well over the years by different people. So
Wendy, who's your counterpart to MODOK? Who's your DC guy? Our gal, I should say.
Yeah, my DC person. You know, I might go with Catwoman.
Okay.
She may be, you know, because I always think Catwoman has always been, you know, they do different things with her. She's sleek, she's sexy, she does a lot of cool stuff, you know, but then, you know, you can make her Batman's love interest. Like, she's always sort of flip-flopped and been very sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, once again, just like the whole idea of Magneto, I like these characters that aren't just villainous, like these characters who sort of go in and out with their relationships. Like you know, I love the White Queen, you know, and sometimes the White Queen's leading the X-Men and sometimes she's in charge of the Hellfire Club, you know. I like it when you have these characters who are these, you know, divergent. You can see both sides of them quite easily and you never know what side of the fence they're on, you know.
Some fluidity there.
Yeah, I was going to say they're more morality fluid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, you know, Matt likes things that are black and white sometimes. So Matt, who's your DC character?
Oh, that's easy for me. It's the Joker.
Yeah.
You know, and what the work that made the Joker my favorite villain in the DC universe, and maybe my favorite villain overall, the work that is responsible for that is The Dark Knight Returns. And really seeing the Joker, the psychology of the Joker in that work, and pretty much has been adopted from, you know, that point forward since that came out. It's just been fascinating to me. I mean, he's the worst thing that can happen and has happened to Gotham City, and he only exists because Batman exists. The best thing, arguably, that's happened for Gotham City. And as soon as Batman stops, Joker stops. Batman is his only motivation. That's the only thing that makes him do what he does. And the fact that he is the purest depiction of an actual sadist in the comics universe to me. I mean, he gets literal joy out of smashing people with a crowbar. That's what makes him happy, as opposed to a villain who's trying to take over the city or, you know, commits violence because they have a goal in mind. They're trying to take over the city or take over the world or rob, you know. No, he just likes to smash people. He likes to break things, and he doesn't care. You know, he's not doing it because he wants to get rich or powerful, anything like that. He is as close as you can get, as far as I can tell, an actual 100% sadist.
Well, and one great thing about him is is he can be written different ways. He can be an anarchist, he can be a sadist, he can be a gangster if you wanted him to be, but when he's written his best, he's absolutely sadistic.
So do you feel, Caleb, that's kind of what sets him apart from Two-Face? Like Two-Face is much more about chaos and that sort of like randomness, whereas like Joker truly is purely about anarchy.
Yeah, I think so. So for me, one of the things about Two-Face is that at least part of him is a victim. There's nothing about Joker that's a victim,
right?
So.
Obviously, you didn't see the movie.
That you're better. You're good. Yeah, if you didn't, good choices.
I did not. So I am actually. We haven't talked. I don't think about this, Wendy. I did not enjoy that film as much as other people did, and that's fine. And there's
neither did I. So there we go.
So you didn't, and Matt didn't like it. Craig, remind me on this one.
I'm 50-50 on it. Depends on the day. Yeah. I was entertained. I don't think there was anything new in it.
You know, if it's a Thursday and it's an odd number, man, I love that Joker.
Yeah, that's kind of the way there was a lot of things about that film that did not click with me. But that's the way art is. That you have those moments. But there's nothing.
That's the way art is, Caleb. But that's also the way that movie was.
Right. That's also a thing that's true. There's no redemption for the Joker. There's no, and at least with other people, other villains inside the DC universe, there's at least some idea of redemption. Maybe not for all of them, but for a lot of them, especially on the ground villains. And it's what separates Two-Face from being the same. If Two-Face were to ever just be Two-Face, if Harvey Dent were to ever go away, I think he could be equally the force of chaos, the force of pure villainy, of just brutality, evil, pain for pain's sake. But he doesn't, because he's got that foot on the brake somewhere deep inside. Almost the same way like the Devil Hulk from the Immortal Hulk, has got Bruce holding that back from just being the worst force of nature. And so for me, that's what elevates. And maybe elevates is the wrong word because it's a completely subjective thing, but that's what elevates both of those characters in a different kind of way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
So what about outside?
But I think that's one great thing about Batman's rogue gallery is that you have so many different characters coming from different angles. It's what gives him, in my opinion, the best rogue gallery in comics.
Yeah.
Speaking of great rogues galleries, I kind of wanted to go about who are your favorite Spider-Man villains? Because I was thinking my personal favorite is always Kraven.
Why?
That's why I said on the show before. because he's so sexy. And because I think Kraven's Last Hunt is one of my favorite villain stories of all time.
That's a great one, no doubt about it.
Wendy stole my answer, and I don't know what to do now.
Well, I mean, once again, what happens if you put Kraven up against the Tiger King? I think he'd kill that guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
There would be no Tiger King. Kraven.
That's what I want. I want some sort of Kraven kills the Tiger King. Kraven hunts the Tiger King story.
That's how Kraven becomes a hero. That is actually Kraven's redemption arc right there. Is how he becomes a hero, is by going and destroying this Tiger King guy.
That's a one-page story though. It wouldn't have to tell that one.
It's a great page, and I would buy the art from it. So no. So second look at the end of the day, Kraven is visually pleasing to me from the Man Cheesecake Factory. He's a kind of a bulky, furry guy that has a Burt Reynolds mustache, and there's something about that I find incredibly enticing.
Yes.
On the other side of that, he's pulled from an amazing work of literature. The Deadliest Game, I think is, it was one of the first stories I read as a kid that really locked me into like reading can be super fun and dark. This like reading doesn't have to be maybe that's it. It was one of the first darker stories, short stories that I read. Where the guy gets trapped on the island and gets hunted by the rich dude like he's game. And to find that character in comics, and yeah, Kraven's Last Hunt. Those 6 issues are some of the best that you get from that character, because he is trying to always prove a point. Like, Two-Face is not trying to prove a point. Joker just is the point. He's not trying to prove the point. He just is. Kraven's trying to prove something to himself, and everybody else be damned. He's not sadistic in the way that Bullseye is sadistic, even though they're both equally, track people down and destroy them. He wants to throw a trophy on the wall. He wants to show, oh no, I could do this thing. This other guy did it just because he needs to kill things, like he's driven to wipe something off the face of the earth. I want you all to know that I'm the guy who did this, and I can't be stopped. Like, I am the apex predator on the planet. And to me, that's when you match that skill that he has with that almost incessant drive, and and no small part arrogance that he has, and you throw that in a kind of a beef daddy body with a fur coat
with a lion head vest.
You mean Thrag?
Yes, Thrag. I don't like it. So yeah, he's been depicted in some recent books. I'm not crazy about the depict. Although what was fun, I'll say this: I forget if it was Moon Girl or if it was Squirrel Girl that had him as kind of a sidekick for a little bit. That was fun. Seeing him in this almost written in this childlike book with this younger girl juxtaposed with him was very interesting, and I say that in a positive way. It was fun to see that, because Kraven doesn't know what to do in that situation. He's just like he's the really rednecky go to the bar, beat the shit out of people dad who's now got this bright-eyed, really intelligent, rainbows and puppies baby girl next to him that he has to find out how to exist with, and it was just a lot of fun. So who are leaving the big two? Who are some of your not even just leaving the big two, we don't have to leave comics, but just open it up to everything, media, film, not real life, because there's kind of a singular answer to that right now. But so who are some of your favorite? So I'll start, just because I'm afraid somebody's going to steal my answer. I don't know that there's been a more celebrated, a more widespread villain than Voldemort from the Harry Potter series in the last 20 years, who has really emerged as almost a leading figure in almost the same way that, you might consider the Joker for comics. Like, you ask somebody who's, and like I said, you ask 100 people, you're going to get 90 people going, oh no, in comics, it's the Joker. You ask anybody right now who's the bad guy, and you're going to get Voldemort. I don't know that anybody has created something like that outside of Voldemort in a long time. And to see that character again, when it was written, you were always wondering if there was going to be a pathway to redemption, and there, you knew there never was. But as you're taken back through the full story, and that character is fully fleshed out, and it's not even a sympathetic thing. It's just like, this happened and no one stopped it. It was happening in front of you all, and the adults in the room kind of just allowed it to happen, and genocide incurred, and so he conquered death to come back, and also had a really kick-ass pet snake. So,
well, I want to jump back for 2 reasons. One, I don't know what a Voldemort is, and 2,
well, because nobody's ever said his name in front of you. They're not allowed to say it. So.
Oh, okay. Well, Wendy had asked who everybody's favorite Spider-Man villain was.
Oh, shit. I'm so sorry.
Who's yours, Craig's? I want to know what Craig's is.
I'm going to go with Norman Osborn, Green Goblin. He to me, he's the iconic kind of nut job. He is Spider-Man's Joker. He's just anarchy. He's chaos, and he's also corporate greed. So there's a combination of things involved with him.
So mine is Doc Ock.
Good one too.
Because Superior Spider-Man, I think Superior Spider-Man definitely catapults him as one of the greatest.
For sure.
Still, I don't know. There's something about still to this day the image of Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock on the side of a building. I don't know what it is about that, but I don't think I'll ever get sick of watching that. When it was in the second Spider-Man movie, I was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And then they put it in the video game, and I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And just the character itself. It's the classic mad scientist. I still have appreciation for that old trope. But yeah, Doc Ock's the one for me.
Well, and I mean, he married Aunt May, so there's that too.
And then there's that, yeah.
You talked about the second Spider-Man film. That depiction of him in that movie was one of the better...
Spot on.
Yeah, one of the better things about quote-unquote superhero films of that era, which, some were good, some were bad. But
I mean, you had the guy, the throw me the idol and I'll throw you the whip guy becomes the most iconic superhero villain of the decade.
Well, that scene where the tentacles come alive is amazing. Amazing. Oh man, I love that scene.
So talking about Spider-Man villains, so look, the man who created them is still, to me, the best at drawing. And I say that, Kraven's Last Hunt being my favorite depiction of Kraven, but if you were to happen to go and buy like the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1,
I have it.
I was sitting here looking at it on my shelf, which is what, as we were talking about, I was like, oh, that's like, we have to say Steve Ditko's name. But he lays out in that book, there's a story where it kind of culminates, and all of the villains come after Spidey at that one point. And there are so many just gorgeous single page depictions of all of these villains, all of the main rogues gallery of Spider-Man. They get their own splash page. And I, like, to this day, I still get goosebumps going back and looking through that, because you're seeing it in real time, and you're just seeing how this design the designs of these characters is so impactful on their persona. And that's, Ditko created the character in the lines. Stan Lee might have fleshed it out with some prose and some quips here and there, but it was the design of the characters that dictated who these people were. And those single page splashes that you get in that storyline, like, to this day, some of the most iconic art of those characters ever produced, and it's the first time they were ever shown.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to discount Ditko's influence on Spider-Man for generations.
Just impossible.
Right.
Our buddy Zach Crucy.
I was just about to say, Zach just got his doctorate doing that. Yeah.
He's got a book coming out that is looking into the life of Ditko. It's being published by Southern Missouri Press, I want to say. And just so when this book comes out, we're actually going to, I'm sure I'll post something on our Facebook page or send it somewhere so people can see it and get it. But it's, number one, Zach is a great guy, and he's a fantastic. I mean, the man got his doctorate writing about Steve Ditko, so he's a superhero in his own right. He's living the best life.
And he teaches a college class about wrestling.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just a sweetheart. He's just a good guy. So on top of that,
I can't wait to read that book.
Yeah, yeah. Did you see there was somebody put something up on eBay? Like I saw it like 2 days ago or something. People were tweeting about it. Where somebody put something up on eBay. It was like, "Oh, you get this comic and a letter from Steve Ditko," and it was like, like that was part of the deal. Like you could get a bunch of these comics and this guy's letter he got from Steve Ditko, and it
Why would
wouldn't
you?
tell you
Who would
anything
give
about it.
that away?
I know.
So I want to go back to, and again, I apologize for, I got lost in it was the mustache. I'm going to blame it. Craven's mustache made me forget that Craig and Matt hadn't dropped theirs. But so who are some of your, we'll jump over to Matt with this one. Outside of comics, outside of, well, at least mainstream comics, who are some of your, or just one or multiple villains that really stand out?
Well, outside of the big two, the other villain I always think of is Judge Dredd.
Judge Dredd's more of an anti-hero. I'm going to defend this.
So okay, so you've got the floor. So tell me why he's an anti-hero and not a villain.
He's an anti-hero because he has a moral code. He's just a little too strict about it. Judge Death is the villain.
So here's, and I'm glad you made this point, Wendy, because this is why I really wanted to name him as a villain. Mm-hmm. Judge Dredd is a hardcore fascist.
Yes.
And he doesn't, and see, I don't think he has a moral code. He's got a code, and that is social organization, I guess you would say. And that tops personal interest. Like if he has to kill a group of people in the interest of maintaining order, mm-hmm. Order takes precedent over the individual. And that's what, that's what makes him a villain instead of a hard-nosed cop. Because a hard-nosed cop is still serving and protecting. Judge Dredd is not serving and protecting. Judge Dredd is enforcement, and he is enforcement of order. Everything else is secondary. Citizens' rights are secondary to order. And if and that's where the character is misserved so often, is he's written like a cop, and he's not a cop.
I've never really thought about it before, but yeah, Judge Dredd and RoboCop are both these products of the 80s, these sort of like early 80s products that both are misunderstood and about fascism.
Yeah. Yeah. And what makes him such a fascinating character for me is, he's got his grim determination. He has got absolutely no sense of humor whatsoever. And, he doesn't want to ascend and gain more power in his system. Judge Dredd only wants to bash heads on the street. That's it. And if he's not bashing heads on the street, it's not his function. And there are some.
I was going to say, isn't that confined by the code of the world that he lives in, though? So you're saying that he doesn't really have a moral code, and granted, I want to, like, you've read so much more, and maybe I'm like I would not be at all surprised if you could lay it out in a way that of something that I'm missing, but his moral code is literally the legal code of the world that he lives in, right? Like he's the judge, jury, and executioner because that's what the law demands of him in that position, and so ergo that's his code. If the law changes, then he changes with the law.
Yeah, see, he's not bad. It's just the law that's bad.
Well, see, and that's I think what I'm saying is what you're saying, what you're saying, Caleb. He doesn't have humanity in him. He doesn't have humanity in him. He only has order in him. Now, if the boundaries of order change, then he moves with that change. But he doesn't have humanity in him. He's humorless. He's compassionate. He has no compassion in him.
Yeah, he's 100% his badge. And in our case, like looking out from a world where that may again may or may not be the way we see it. It's one of those things like everybody's the hero of their own story, I guess. And so you look at that stark depiction of true fascism, of true state. I don't even know what the word is. Just dominance, and yes, from our perspective, as living in a world who doesn't have that, I could very much see where, yeah, that person is a villain. And you know, and I'm not taking a side on this, but we also live in a day and age where a lot of people see anybody who's a cop automatically as a bad guy. And I don't think that's a fair depiction of people who are police officers today. I think there
Of
are a lot
course
of
it's
bad
not.
cops.
Yeah, of course it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, there are officers who are bad cops, obviously, but to cast a blanket thing over, you know, the police as all being bad, I think is almost opposite to the world that did Pat Mills create?
So Pat
Judge
Mills. So it's interesting. So John Wagner and oh shoot, I'm spacing on the artist. Anyway, John Wagner and another artist created the character, but they created his design and then immediately walked away from him. So Pat Mills actually fleshed the character out and wrote the first Judge Dredd stories to actually give him personality. Now,
Carlos Esquera, is that who you're thinking of?
Was it Carlos Esquera that designed the character? I was thinking it was not him, but maybe it was.
Carlos didn't step away from that character. Carlos wrote a ton of Judge Dredd.
He was the artist.
Mm-hmm. Drew a ton of Judge Dredd. Actually, so fun fact, I picked up a big hardcover, the art of Carlos Esquera, Judge Dredd, almost an omnibus, this past week from our LCS. Just because he's my favorite 2000 AD artist of that era. He was. Unfortunately, he's gone now. So I don't think he was the initial artist, but I could be wrong. But because he drew a ton of it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. But where I was going with that, so Pat Mills wrote the first Judge Dredd stories, but he immediately the character became enormously popular immediately. So John Wagner came back and picked the character back up, and John Wagner actually wrote the character the best. You know, as much as I'm a huge Pat Mills fan, but John Wagner wrote the best Judge Dredd, and he wrote him the longest.
Mm.
Pat Mills gave Dredd more humanity. Wagner's the one that wrote him as, no, this isn't a guy that makes friends.
But the other thing about Judge Dredd is like it always had a very, very sort of off-kilter humor to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Judge Dredd's surrounded by ludicrous characters. I mean, you've got he is no humor. Everything's black and white. Everything is order, and he's surrounded by chaos and ridiculous people. It's hilarious. It's hilarious to see him interact in those worlds because he doesn't see any humor in them. I mean, it's like the last show I talked about a Judge Dredd book. He was chasing down a cult leader called Bishop Emoji, and all Bishop Emoji's followers had emojis branded on their heads. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, but he never sees any humor in this kind of stuff. It is, you know, it's great.
So
maybe I just relate to Judge Dredd. Maybe that's just, maybe that's why I like him. I don't understand these things either. These kids these days with their TikTok.
Yeah, I don't laugh at the kids' jokes either.
I'm the old man in this room.
I'm still trying to get over Matt not knowing what a Voldemort is. Because so here's the thing: if you were to ever, you might not like the movies, you might not like the entirety of the books. You would like the character of Voldemort. you would dig that character a lot.
He has no nose.
He has no nose, and he lived in the back of a guy's head for a little bit. That was fun. So Wendi, who do you see as one of the more prominent non-big two in any medium of your choice villains that have stood out in the last whenever?
I'm afraid to go into a Star Wars discussion, but I mean Kylo Ren.
Okay. Wendi,
why are you afraid of Star Wars?
I feel like it's been so beaten into the ground in every possible conceivable manner. But I mean, Kylo Ren has clearly become like one of the most iconic bad characters of the past like 5 or so years, and people have very, very conflicting feelings about him. And I feel like he's somebody we're going to be breaking apart and talking about forever and ever and ever. And he killed his father.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic villain.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, are you telling me that Star Wars fans are going to dissect the personality of a character over decades? Is that what you're going to sit here and say? That doesn't happen.
But I feel attacked.
No,
my villain happens to be Star Wars as well, and that's Kylo Ren's grandfather, Darth Vader. So
Darth Vader is one of my all-time top favorite villains in media.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, iconic, and the more you learn about him, the more sorry you feel for the character. Quite honestly, he was so manipulated from birth up until his fall and redemption. So it's right there with you, Wendy. I would have went with Kylo Ren as well.
Yeah,
he's a fantastic villain, and the last movie even gave him more depth, in my opinion.
So after the last movie, do you both still consider him a villain?
Oh yeah,
he's
same
still
as Anakin.
responsible. I mean, he's still responsible for genocide. Fuck yes.
Yeah, he's still patricide, genocide, stopped just short of matricide.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely a villain now. Ben Solo, once he was redeemed, which is the thing about Star Wars, is you get the two. They're able to split those personalities. So Ben Solo maybe isn't, but Kylo Ren for sure was.
No, I was pulling up a list of quote unquote villains represented throughout media.
Well, I mean, like, there's so many things, like, if we're going to go into, I mean, obviously we could go into horror films and things like that, and, Norman Bates and iconic villains of every sort of genre, that would take
Buffalo Bill.
Mm-hmm. Anton Chigurh.
I was just seeing him.
Gosh, thank you very much.
I get that reference now.
Interestingly enough, Scar from The Lion King is on a top list of villains.
That's a good choice.
I always made the vow that the only way I'm ever going to watch Lion King is with you, and so I feel like perhaps now is the time. You and I need to have like a Zoom Lion King party or something.
We can make that happen.
Wendy has not seen Lion King?
Has not.
Oh hell no.
Wow.
I only recently learned that Gaston from Beauty and the Beast is not like a handsome prince. Like I just assumed.
This is an interesting black hole that is in your world. I have to say, this is pretty interesting.
Now
he's very hot. He can do a lot of push-ups. Like that's all I really know of him. Right?
He has a cool song about him.
Right? He has a cool song about him. He looks very manly. I mean, this beast is very villainous. He's holding people captive in a castle, right? I don't know.
Yes.
I understand.
You're doing yourself a huge disservice by not taking in Jeremy Irons' performance as Scar. It is one of the top villain depictions on film.
All right, then I will explore this with Caleb and Roger. We can cry together.
Matt,
have you ever? So now my brain's. So have you ever seen The Jungle Book?
Well, yeah, that was in my time frame. I just never saw any movies like past 1985.
Okay.
I've just never seen, because I just slightly aged out of it, so I didn't see The Little Mermaid.
I'm just thinking of the Disney villains now that are so iconic, like Shere Khan. I'm like, oh my god, does she not know about Shere Khan?
Shere Khan's great, yeah. That's great.
So I'm trying to get over the tingly feelings I got when Matt was saying poetic, beautiful things about Scar. Speaking my love language over here. You also have to juxtapose Wendy's not having seen Lion King with the fact that she's almost an encyclopedic font of like Steamboat Willie. All of these like early Disney, early animations, like she just loves and adores those things. So it's hilarious to me that she can tell you all about one, and it's just like, who's Pumbaa? So,
I can tell you about Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, but I can't tell you about Pumbaa.
Right. Well, guys,
I have a Lion King tattoo, so.
See, I need to get one. I need to get a Lion King tattoo. That needs to be a thing. Because it's my favorite film. Like flat, like I adore the Lion King.
So then, have you seen the CGI version of Lion King?
I have. I I was entertained. So I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's both going to be an impossible task to make me love that movie because literally the thing that it is marketed after is my favorite film. I could literally look art films out the window. You guys know I love them. I love serious genre film. Nothing is The Lion King for me. That is the pinnacle of my personal enjoyment of watching motion pictures. So it
So
was
the
not
question
going.
is, what weak Kool-Aid did they try to serve you as Scar in that movie?
Not Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, but it was not a bad depiction of Scar. One thing that I did appreciate, and maybe this is part of living in 2020. Um, I do like Jeremy Irons' depiction of that. It is an iconic depiction. It also plays with the tropes of the quote unquote gay villain, like Jafar. These almost effeminate male characters that are their feminism is played up to make them even more, potentially really like maybe they're not only bad people, but they're from a homophobic light, sexually detestable as well. And there's a long history of that throughout everything, literature, film, what have you. They didn't do that with the quote unquote live action version of Scar. They didn't ham up the gay for that character, and on some level I did appreciate that, because at least they're cognizant of getting away from that trope. Now, and I mean, to be fair, they also got rid of the Timon and Pumbaa singing medley with the lines, "What do you want me to do? Dress and drag and do the hula." They updated it to kind of remove those lines. So it wasn't bad. I was entertained. I know a lot of people hated it. The musical numbers were great. They really hit the emotional moments of the film. They got it right. So I don't necessarily ever need to see it again. I'm sure I will watch it again with the nieces and the nephew, and if they ever want to. But I've always got The Lion King.
Have you seen the musical?
The play?
Yeah. Have you been to the play?
I have.
Because I mean, the costuming for that looks really cool. Like I would totally go to that. It's always looked really cool.
I've seen video of the Broadway play. I've never actually been to a Broadway play. I'm uncultured in that manner.
So I saw it off Broadway, but it was fantastic.
Have you been to the Disney on Ice version?
No.
No. I need to. Well, guys, are we about ready to kind of start wrapping this thing up and landing that plane?
Yeah,
yes.
Let's do it.
All right. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us. As we have said before, we have no new comics coming out on Wednesday, and normally when we close out a show, we like to set the menu for the next week by saying, "Hey, this is coming out on Wednesday. We don't know if it's going to be good. It might be, it might not be, but here's an idea of what we're going to try to read." We don't have that right now. What that means is exactly what Wendi said earlier. We have the opportunity and the privilege of reaching back into that stack of books that we have been meaning to, read or reread for the longest time. And so this is, in saying that, I'm going to give you guys an idea of just a collected edition or a graphic novel that I'm going to read in this next week, and I'm sure everybody else will too. I am a Hulk head. I love that character. He's my favorite Marvel character of all time. I cannot think of a better time to reach on my shelf and grab a hardcover version of a story that I think all Hulk fans should read. And if you're just a fan of Marvel at all, you're gonna wanna check it out. And that is Hulk: Return of the Monster. This was written. It comes from Hulk 34 through 39, written by Bruce Jones, penciled by John Romita Jr., but when he was not 2020 version of John Romita Jr. This is an earlier version. He was inked by Tom Palmer in this, which Tom Palmer over JR is the good. There's also some Brian Azzarello in this, some Richard Corbin. So there's a lot to appreciate in this story, and it's one of my favorite modern stories prior to Immortal Hulk, obviously, which is, I think we're living in a time of brilliance when it comes to that. But it was out of the volume 2. It's one of my favorite Hulk stories not written by Peter David. Let me put it that way. So go check out Hulk: Return of the Monster.
Well, I got to say that one of the things I bought at C2E2 that's been sitting on my coffee table here is Kelly Williams' A Letter to Joe, written by Joseph Saraki. And I know you read this already, didn't you, Caleb?
I did. I absolutely did, and loved every bit of it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's on my short stack to read too.
yeah, so I know this is my jam. It's a World War II story. The art looks amazing, and so I've had it sitting here on the coffee table for the past like 3 weeks or so. So I finally got to pick this up.
I picked up Batman Year One this week, much to Matt's happiness. Frank Miller, David Mazzucchelli, and Richmond Lewis. I started reading this, and I plan on finishing it this week. To me, it's better than Dark Knight Returns as far as just story. From what I've read so far, I'm not saying it's more significant in the Batman mystique, but I think it's a better story.
It's brilliant in the fact that it's so simple. That's what I love that story. Love that story. And it's got one of my favorite Batman moments ever in it too.
And granted, I'm only about, like I said, halfway through it. So
Mazzucchelli's art in that book is just jaw dropping.
Yeah, and it matched the tone of the book so well. It's just
yes.
It's just simple. It's a minimalist art style, and it's a small Batman story. So I actually just started a book that I've been needing to read for a long, long time, and I'm finally getting to it. The Brat Pack by Richard Veitch.
Oh, it's a good one.
That.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
You've never read this before?
No, I've had it, on my list to read for years, and just keep bouncing it around. So finally, I'm sitting down and reading it.
I'm glad. Nice. I'm happy for you.
So
he just got accepted as a artist laureate at a play. I don't know. I'd have to do some more research, but yeah, he just got a big award of some sort.
Yeah, I love Rick Veitch. That's awesome. And also, what was the other book that he had like after that?
I know which one you're talking about. My brain just went dead.
Yeah, but I remember there was always that iconic cover of the dude cutting himself, shaving his legs.
Yeah.
And that always just made me squirm,
Yeah. Well, the book itself is making me squirm because I've cracked it open, gotten a few pages in. I'm like, oh damn. I mean, yeah.
Was it Max Immortal?
Yeah, Max Immortal. Right?
Yeah.
That's like his sort of follow-up book. Yeah.
I just remember him, from my childhood. I remember him doing all the Ninja Turtles books.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So first, to see him in this light, it's like, wow, this isn't the Ninja Turtles I remember.
No, this was him giving a giant middle finger to the industry in a way that at the time, like if you go back and read it now, as you are, you might feel like, oh, I've seen this other places before, but at the time this came out, you hadn't seen it other places.
Right.
This was laying new stepping stones that writers, some of your favorite writers like Garth Ennis, followed, and they would not have the ability to write those stories and to craft those narratives and to be as arguably edgelordy as it got there for a while, if not for the brilliance that Veitch did in that work. We got to bring that to the show because I will chat the shit out of it with you. So everybody, we appreciate you guys hanging out here with us. We want to extend a giant over the internet, space appropriate elbow fist bump of love to our dear friend Wendi for jumping on here and talking with us. We absolutely loved it.
I love it when you fist me with love.
That is fists of love. If you want more of this, you know where you can go. I'm going to tell you where you can go. And oftentimes, Wendi and her fists of love are there. It's our Facebook group. We are the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. Wendi pops up quite often in chats and comment sections. She is there to, you want to talk about old film, she's your girl. You want to talk about some comics, she's got you. You need to talk about creators. If you have not listened to Double Page Spread, she has a incredible interview show where she talks with creators of great fame and creators that you've never heard before who drop who are working on new stuff. It's one of the podcasts I listened to before I started doing podcasts. Wendi is one of the people, along with Bill Zanowitz and the EOC guys, that made me come to Craig one day and be like, dude, like, podcasts are awesome. We should do this. It's one of the things that gave birth to Southern Fried Geekery, and I can't thank you enough for that, Wendi. You also can check out our Twitter pages and our Instagram pages. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those. If you want to inquire about what exactly goes into the Fists of Love, you can shoot an email to us at southernfriedgeekery.com or at gmail.com. And Wendi, why don't you go ahead and let them know where they can find all of your brilliance?
Oh, you can find Double Page Spread. You can find it on iTunes and on Stitcher and on any place where fine podcasts are to be found. And you could buy some of the merchandise. If I may pump that at the moment. You can go on Threadless and look up Double Page Spread, and you can look just as cool as Caleb in my adorable, cutesy Judge Dredd shirt.
Yep. I've got the little Dreddy shirt, which actually inspired, I told Matt this a few weeks ago. I was wearing that shirt and inspired my husband to inquire as to what Little Dreddy was. And then 15 minutes later, we were sitting down and watching Judge Dredd. So,
this is fantastic. I love that. I'm glad.
Now, were you watching Judge Dredd?
We were watching Dredd, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm glad that a cutesy portrayal of such a fascist villain inspired things.
It led to some Netflix and chill for us. It was great times. So thank you for that. All right. Well, we appreciate you all hanging in here with us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Unstructured, went to a lot of places. We talked about some stuff in this episode. We'll be back next week, and we're going to talk about comics as we are wont to. So come back, hear what we're reading. If nothing else, guys, go forth and love some comics.
Woo!
I was wondering if Craig was going to go, or he was going to tell me to, if he was going to make me go and
dig up Jerry's.
Yeah.